Welcome to Group 1's presentation on active server pages. Next slide. What is an active server page? An active server page is an HTML page that includes one or more script, which is a small embedded program, that are processed on the Microsoft web server before the page is sent to the user. An active server page is somewhat similar to a server-side include or a common gateway interface application in that all involve programs that run on the server. They all run on the server, usually tailoring a page for the user. Typically, the script in the web page is that the server receives the input. Typically, the script in the web page at the server, the server user uses inputs received as a result of the user's request for the page to access data from a database, and then it builds or customizes the page on the fly before sending it to the requester. ASP is a feature of Internet Service Information, Microsoft Internet Information Server, but since the server-side script is just building a regular HTML page, it can be delivered to almost any browser. You can create an ASP file by including a script written in VBScript or JScript into an HTML file, or by using an ActiveX data objects program statements within the HTML file. Then you just name the HTML file with the suffix ASP.ASP and it will create that. Next slide. How ASP works. When you incorporate ASP into your website, here's what happens. First, the user brings up a website where the default page has the .asp extension. Then the browser requests the ASP file from the web server. The server-side script begins to run with ASP, and then the ASP processes the request file sequentially top-down, and then executes any script commands contained in the file, and then produces an HTML web page, which is then sent back to the browser. Because your script runs on the server, the web page does all the processing, and standard HTML pages can be generated and sent to the browser. This means that your web pages are only limited by what your web server supports. Another benefit of having your script reside on the server is that the user cannot view the source on the original script code. Instead, the user sees only the generated HTML as well as the non-HTML content such as XML on the pages that are being viewed. Next, Shiva will move on to the technical specifications.
Angela, thank you for that overview on ASP. Now let's look at the technical specifications, the software and the hardware requirements for ASP. On the software side, it needs an operating system. It's a Windows platform application. It needs at least a Windows 2000 or 2003 server operating system. It's an integral part of Microsoft Internet Information Server 5 or above. It's also a part of .NET Framework version 2.0. From the backend perspective, SQL Server 2005 or 2008 onwards. Looking at the hardware on the web server side, I think it requires a minimum of Pentium 3. 2 gigahertz are better, and the AMD it's XP operating at 1.8 gigahertz. RAM, obviously, the minimum requirements is 512 or better, and the website file size is approximately 50 MB. So now let's look at the features of ASP. So there are several features, as Angela highlighted. It is a server-side application framework, which means it builds up a regular HTML page and it can be rendered or delivered to any browser and runs on Windows Server. Bundling and minification feature is nothing but a feature that actually bundles and minimizes the size of the scripts and style sheets in an application. This feature has a great impact on the performance of the web application because of the size. Model binding is another feature that actually, the biggest advantage of that is actually it enables easy unit testing of the methods that you're actually programming or coding. Support for OpenID is a feature that can easily use external service to log into web applications. WebSockets is another key feature, which allows to perform the duplex communication between the client browser and the web browser. And the ASP.NET 4.5 version, it provides an excellent support to the HTML5 form types. Some of the controls that are available in HTML form are mail, the URL, number, range, etc. Along those lines, the newer version also supports the web API feature. It actually helps to build and consume the HTTP servers very, very easily. So those are some of the highlights. Now I will turn it over to Matt, who will just take us through the cost.
Costs of becoming involved in ASP from a professional standpoint are actually very low. You don't need to be a 4-year bachelor's or master's graduated person to become licensed to do ASP. The Austin Community College actually lists their ASP certification course as 7 weeks and $1,100 in investment, and they advertise being 0 to programmer ready by the time you get done with the training. So it's very low cost to become an ASP professional. If a business wants to purchase all of the infrastructure to support ASP web applications for themselves, these are the Windows Server 2016 costs for purchasing either a basic foundation or essentials server if you're a small business or you expect lower traffic, or if you need to have the really beefy stuff, you can buy standard or data center editions of Windows Server. And the same with SQL Server for the database applications of ASP. It comes anywhere from Express as a free entry-level database all the way up to the Enterprise Edition, which is over $14,000. And then the latest editions of Microsoft support include Microsoft Azure Basic for the SQL Server, and this is several different breakdowns in their price tiering. So they've got Basic, they've got a Standard Edition, and then they've got a Premium Edition. And then Microsoft Azure also includes a cost estimator, so you can choose which products from Microsoft Azure you want in your estimate. And what I did was I chose an application service, a SQL database, and a Visual Studio development license, as well as a support package. And everything is calculated using the standard price tiering. What it came out to was one application instance with 200 SSL connections and 200 IPsec connections was going to cost $9,600 a month. Having an elastic database with a primary and a alternate database running for business continuity, that's going to be 2 databases for $460, and then a 20-user Visual Studio license with 1 30-minute build per month to Azure was $220. And standard level support includes much quicker support response times from Microsoft. So this will only come out to $10,000 a month, whereas if you needed the SQL Server Enterprise Edition, that was going to be $14,000 on its own. ASP perceptions are a little hard to gauge because programmers are very, very particular. They're either pro ASP and they're ASP programmers, or they're very anti-ASP and they're not ASP programmers. But generally, these are the top words that reviewers and technical users would apply to the ASP.NET design framework. And I'll be followed by Kevin with user interfaces.
Thank you, Matt. For the user interfaces for ASP, there's 2. There's GUI and command line. The user interface for ASP.NET is mostly based on the C# programming system. What you have before you there is the GUI-based approach for programming some with the ASP.NET. On the next slide, there is the command line version of programming with ASP.NET. There are a lot of good third-party tools for GUI design for ASP.NET. Came across one called artster.com that was a pretty good-looking GUI interface to work with ASP.NET. And then on the next slide, on scalability, the scalability for ASP.NET has really come a long way from when it was first designed. When it was first, as it's been developed, when it was first developed, it was WebCon sitting in a load balancer, and there was an ASP.NET web farm that you could scale horizontally, but your session data and all that was still housed in one server that provided little or no scalability. Microsoft has since come back and made some changes to that, and now they have a load balance. Users hit a load balancer, which hits a web server farm, which hits a data caching server, and then they have developed that where you can have multiple data caching servers that hold that data in the RAM and control your input outputs and all that through there, and you can scale those horizontally, allowing you a lot more scalability and a lot more growth in your server farms. And conclusion is that I hope that we've given you a brief, very concise overview of what ASP.NET is and what it can do.